Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the daily Manchester United podcast. My name is Niall Hannigan and I am doing a little bit of a solo pod this evening. So we're meant to have a crossover with the Leicester City podcast. I think that podcast has gone into administration. So maybe hopefully in the future we'll be able to get them on. Maybe when we're both in the championship, we can do the Global Sports Podcast Network from the championship and get both the Man United and Leicester podcasters on a bit of a crossover then. But for the moment, when we're both in the Premier League, we're unable to do that. So for today's episode, I thought I was thinking about different topics to do actually. Wasn't too sure. Obviously, we had the Wildcard Wednesday yesterday where Kieran and the gang were kind of reminiscing on some of the seasons of gone by. It's what we do here at the podcast when we can't talk about positive things that's going on currently. You know, we have to reminisce about the past. So I think there was a few Fergie seasons that they brought up and Champions League nights and nanny sendings off, but we won't kind of go into that. But for today's podcast, I actually decided to have a look at players that have played for Man United and for Leicester City. And I was thinking off the top of my head, I could only think of a couple. But then when I went online and did a bit of research, there's actually a decent few names there. So I thought we kind of spend a few minutes to kind of go through some of these players. I suppose how they get on with Leicester and then their Manchester United career as well. And some of them have definitely got mentions in other podcasts that we've done as well in the past, and especially on Wildcard Wednesday's episodes of players that we might want to have back in the team, players that might have got into best 11s back in the day. So yeah, I thought we'll have a bit of a run through and see how we get on. And I suppose there's only one place to start here because, you know, the main man himself, the man that was brought in for his retirement plan and to get his coaching badges, who has been playing absolutely brilliantly for us when called upon, is Jonny Evans. Obviously, a man that has played for Man United for so long back in the day with Ferguson, and then had, you know, unbelievable performances at Leicester as well when they were going through their really, really good patch. And yeah, earned himself a recall then back to United. Obviously had a bit of a gap in between, I suppose. Kind of returning a couple of years ago to the squad. But spent 4 years at Leicester City. Played 152 times for them. Had 7 goals, 4 assists. Not bad for a centre half. For being there for a good few years towards the kind of twilight of his career, I suppose, is what we expected. But then, you know, comes up with the goods for United as well when we needed him, especially under Ten Hag. So, Jonny Evans is an interesting one. But yeah, someone that's I think both fan bases will be fairly fond of. What's interesting is who did play beside Jonny Evans when they were at Leicester is a well-known Harry Maguire. 76 matches for Leicester, 5 goals, 4 assists. Now, thinking back on it, Maguire was absolutely excellent for Leicester in that season and those couple of seasons that he played. But Evans was beside him. And, you know, looking back on it, are you thinking, well, maybe was Evans getting the best out of Maguire? Was he kind of positioning him in a way where he was seen as this £80 million player? And kind of the best English centre half at the time, along with John Stones. So, you know, he was kind of giving him that platform, I suppose, to perform at that level. And that's what happened. I mean, Maguire was fancied by many teams around the country. I'm pretty sure Man City as well were in for him. So, you know, it was a big coup at the time for United to get a centre half like that. It was an area that was a big focus for the club. There was a hole, there was a gap there that needed to be filled. Maguire had shown great kind of potential with the England squad as well in that back three under Gareth Southgate. He was very good on the ball. He was kind of going on the marauding runs, I suppose, in that Leicester City team, and yeah, really comfortable in the ball, very imposing in the air, and they were quite a pragmatic team. Leicester, even that title-winning team that Leicester had, were very pragmatic in terms of the way they played. Definitely not a possession-based team or anything like that, but yeah, kind of defended very well, and that kind of give a good platform for the rest of the team. And I suppose that's where Harry Maguire shone. So yeah, he had an excellent time at Leicester, and then obviously gets his move to United, and yeah, it's been a roller coaster for him, to be honest. When he did sign back in 2019, he's been here for quite a while now, over 200 games for the club, and yeah, he's gone through a lot, I suppose, of scrutiny with that £80 million transfer fee on his head. It's difficult to kind of get over that as a player. And look, we know when there's an English player that's signed, there's always a bit of English tax that's kind of added onto that as well. But yeah, look, he's not in control of the £80 million. He can only get on and do his best. And I think he's kind of had a bit of resurgence as well under Amorim over the last few months, where, look, we know the team in general is not playing well, but the best we've seen in Maguire, especially in an England shirt, is in that back three. And, if he is able to kind of establish that central position of the back three and those three centre halves, then it could be a really good couple of seasons for him. Obviously, we have Yarrow and we have De Ligt as well, who can kind of play in those positions. But if he can kind of nail that down, I suppose, I think he can get a new lease of life. Under previous management, he was kind of cast off to the side as well, and was under a lot of scrutiny from England fans as well, because he kept being picked for them even when he might not have been playing regularly or even playing well for Man United. So yeah, Maguire, when you think back and you're trying to think of the signings that we've made and how successful they've been, when you think it on the grand scheme of things, he's probably up there, which I suppose is an indictment of the type of signings that we've been making and how successful they've been. So I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but yeah, he definitely hasn't been part of the worst bunch of signings that we've made. So yeah, thought that was another interesting name from the Leicester Man United crossover. We'll take a quick break here for an ad, and we'll be back with a few more names of what we can discuss.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and it's delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
So we've mentioned Johnny Evans, we've mentioned Harry Maguire. This next player has been mentioned as well previously in the past, on an episode that we did, definitely a Wildcard Wednesday episode. And that player is Danny Simpson. Premier League winning Danny Simpson. He's always on podcasts talking about his time at Man United and his stories with Cristiano Ronaldo and everything. But yeah, leaves United, goes on a bit of a journey. Was at United during the golden years, I suppose, so it was very difficult to actually get into the team. And just kind of, I suppose, perseverance and that attitude of kind of never giving up and actually making a career for yourself and battling across numerous clubs and then finally getting that opportunity. And I mean, he's part of that famous Leicester team. Like that story is just unbelievable. And you have a player, Danny Simpson, who basically played every game right back, then qualified for the Champions League the year after and was playing in that. So yeah, an absolutely wonderful story. And you had Robert Huth, you had Wes Morgan, you had Fuchs in left back, you had in midfield, you had Kante, of course, Mahrez, Vardy, Osaka. Yeah, unbelievable squad. I mean, such a memorable team. What an amazing season. And yeah, I don't think anything like that will ever happen again. And yeah, I suppose to have a player that has played for United, played for Leicester, and the title win has come with Leicester. It's a sad indictment of where we are, that they've been closer to it than we have. But yeah, another interesting name to bring up in the list of players, I suppose. So I was looking through the list again, and Jesse Lingard. Now, to be honest, I would kind of back myself for being able to kind of name a few players that could play for both, or these sort of questions where this player, who's he played for, or name a few players that'll play for both teams. The Jesse Lingard one is absolutely mental. 2012, he made 5 appearances, and according to this stat that I have in front of me now, don't trust this source. I don't even think there's a proper name on this source. So, whoever comes for me in the comments, then rightly so, because this could be totally wrong. But it says he has a combined minutes of 81. 81 minutes, and he's appeared 5 times. So a couple of substitute appearances in the year 2012. I can't remember him playing much, to be honest, for that, and I assume that this would have been in the Championship in the EFL. So I'm not gonna beat myself up about trying to remember back in 2012, when I probably didn't know who Jesse Lingard was back then. But yeah, another interesting character. Had a couple of wonderful seasons for United. Was at the club from 2014 to 2021 in terms of actually playing in the first team. Had those couple of seasons with Van Gaal, with Mourinho, and was part of that interesting team that we had with Pogba and the dynamics within that, and Martial and Lukaku. And yeah, it was a strange time, but I suppose looking back, you're thinking, well, there was plenty of quality in that team as well. So we got a couple of FA Cup wins, we got the Europa League win. There was a couple of things that we were able to get over the line within that time frame. But yeah, another player, an academy graduate, bit of a maverick as well. Interesting player to watch, really entertaining. Had a great run with England as well in the I think it was in the World Cup actually, when they got to the semi-final against Croatia. That kind of in Russia, when they weren't really back to do anything, I suppose. They did really, really well, and he played a major part in that as well. So yeah, another interesting player that's played for both teams. We have Keith Gillespie, who is always mentioned in the same breath with the class of '92. Gary Neville always speaks about him, that he was good mates with him. Obviously went off to Newcastle, but played for United in 1994, made 9 appearances, got a goal, and then played for Leicester about 10 years later. Then 42 appearances for them. So another player that maybe could have had more, had he stayed at United and been part of all that class of '92. I suppose that he would have grown up within the academy. But another interesting name that we thought we'd add to the list for this evening. The next one I'm seeing here is Tom Cleverley, and once again, similar with the Jesse Lingard one, I'm not going to beat myself up. He played for Leicester in 2008. Like, I was making my first communion in 2008, so I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna beat myself up for not knowing about this. But 15 appearances in 2008, 2 goals, 3 assists. It's pretty good for 15 appearances. I mean, considering he's a kind of a defensive midfielder and a bit of a workhorse in that midfield, it's a pretty decent return. 5 goal involvements in 15 appearances, so not bad at all. 1,000 minutes, so he's not starting all those matches either. He's getting some sub appearances, so really decent for Leicester. And then three years later, he signs for United. Plays 67 times, 3 goals, 4 assists. Nearly scored more for Leicester than he did at United. Only got 1 more assist more in those 3 years than he did at Leicester. But yeah, part of the title winning team. Came in towards the end of the Ferguson era there as well. So another player that you kind of look at the squad now and you go, look, Cleverley wasn't going to set the world alight in terms of technical ability and one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, but in terms of application and work rate and fulfilling and getting up to United standards in terms of the training and being able to put in a performance and getting results, he's right up there, and he's probably a player that you'd look to want to have at the moment in that dressing room, just to kind of bring a bit of home truths, I suppose, to it. Similar with I suppose we have Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans, but, similar with other players as well, like Danny Simpson, that you'd want to have that kind of bring that heart back into the team, I suppose, and have that bit of bite about it, because at the moment it's just severely lacking. But yeah, so we've rattled through a few names there: Johnny Evans, Harry Maguire, Jesse Lingard. Who else? We had Danny Simpson, Tom Cleverley, couple of random ones. Richie DeLate obviously played a lot for Leicester, 4 seasons, and made 3 appearances for United. We had Michael Keane as well, who, was well kind of renowned, I suppose, underage at United, and only played a couple of times, I suppose, and played a bit more for Leicester. Another one was Nick Powell. That was kind of one of those ones where he was around in that end of the Ferguson era as well, where, kind of an attacking midfielder forward that could kind of play. Didn't really cement his position down, I suppose, in Leicester or United. But an interesting name that I thought I kind of put out there. And finally, I suppose, going back in time a bit is Dion Dublin. But yeah, so there's been quite a lot, I suppose, that have played for United and Leicester over the years. Some bigger names than others, and some that have done better at Leicester than have done at United. Another one as well was Danny Drinkwater, another Premier League title in that team. Got his big move to Chelsea, didn't really work out for him at all. But yeah, similar, I suppose, to Danny Simpson, where he goes to that Leicester team, they add a bit of grit, they get over the line, and they have an absolutely sensational season and end up winning the Premier League. So it's a brilliant story altogether. But yeah, I suppose that's a few names that have played for both teams. Looking forward to the game at the weekend. Obviously, we had the 3-0 win earlier on in the season. We've got the Ruud van Nistelrooy angle as well at Leicester. I would say it's a really interesting tie, but we're battling out. It's probably a 6-pointer at the end of the day. So we'll have to go into it with the same mentality as we go into every other game, which seems to be pretty poor at the moment. So let's see how we get on. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode. We didn't get a chance to do a crossover, but we did our own crossover. We got players that have played for both teams, discussed a bit about their careers both at Leicester and at United. And we'll see, I suppose, in 10 years' time when this podcast is still going and ourselves and Leicester are in League 2 and we're kind of talking about the good old days of when we were in the Premier League. I'm sure there'll be a lot more players that will cross paths with both these teams again in the future. But thanks very much for listening. And we're now on YouTube, so I'm going to have the whole big screen to myself, unfortunately. So you can see my face on YouTube. You can also tune in on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And we're also on social media as well. So if you want to give us a follow and drop a few comments about how amazing United are doing this year, then feel free. And if you're enjoying it, leave a 5-star rating, and we'll see you in the next one.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.